Good afternoon. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to FIDM's ongoing series, The Future of. Our topic this month is digital marketing. I am Tom Henkenius, the director of FIDM's Bachelor in Digital Marketing, as well as our bachelor's degree in graphic design. We actually wanted to start this year talking about the year as a whole, sort of like a future of 2022, the biggest trends that are going to impact this digital world, this retail world, the marketing world, the design world. So we discussed social commerce as maybe one place to jump off. That's that ability to shop right there on your favorite social channel, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok. We also got into a deep discussion on Web3. So if you haven't heard about Web3 yet, stand by, it's coming. Specifically NFTs, though, is what really got our attention. That in turn led us to a discussion on the Metaverse. And I'll just say out front, I don't think we'd be mentioning the Metaverse today if Facebook hadn't changed its name to Meta back in November. We'll be talking about Web3, though, across the year, and including today. But that Web3 is sort of the advance of Web 2.0, and now we take it into a more secure space built on blockchain and all of that. And you'll see over the course of this year, we plan on having several conversations around Web3. Anyway, though, all these tangents, you know, the Web3, the NFTs, the social commerce, the mobile commerce, all these things led us to one thing: digital marketing. So that's how we arrive at today's conversation with three really amazing and impressive subject matter experts. They are all teachers in our digital marketing program here at FIDM. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Taryn Aronson. In addition to teaching at FIDM, she's an alum of our beauty industry merchandising and marketing program. And after completing her BA at UCLA, she worked in marketing, product development, public relations for a variety of brands like Josie Maran Cosmetics, Smashbox, Urban Decay, and is now running her own social media marketing agency called Totally Taryn Social. The branding is amazing if you take a second to do a Google search of it. Later, we'll also be joined by Tiffany Frake. Tiffany is a marketing exec with nearly 20 years experience in the industry. She's worked with some pretty impressive brands: Acura, Lexus, Toyota. In 2018, she too set out on her own and launched SparkSet, which is a digital marketing and customer experience agency. It's been so impressive to watch her scale this over the last several years, now serving several brands across the Western US. Each of our guests will speak equally, or could speak equally, to the areas of digital marketing. And we typically break them down into three. So it's paid, earned, and owned. But I asked each of them to focus on a specific area that largely aligns with the courses they teach here at the college. So our first topic is going to be earned media. You might also know that as public relations. Our guest who can speak on that is Michelle Chila. She spent years with Tacori, which is the engagement ring company that you might be familiar with. She served as senior vice president of marketing, and then also a founder, started her own agency, MC Squared, which has rapidly become a central place for brands to turn to when they're trying to energize their narrative. I'll have her explain why that matters, because I think you'll understand in a few minutes that it's a specific and an interesting space she's working in. Michelle, thanks for joining us. I want to start, though, with you talking about earned media and what you think is kind of the most important things to think about as we go into 2022.
Hey, Tom, nice to see you officially. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you.
You know, when we were chatting earlier and you asked me to identify some of the major trends and just sort of offhand, being real. PR has always been about relationships, about understanding your publics and who and how and when, where and why you want to communicate with them. That has only been enhanced through technology and the ability to understand more deeply how our audiences live and see how they live. So we have that, just being real and building those relationships strongly. Flexibility. If these past 2 years have taught us nothing about nimbleness, pivoting, flexibility, whatever overly used word you are ready to retire, resiliency, flexibility is key. So with the news cycle being so compressed, with the obstacles and gatekeepers getting smaller and the amount of news sources getting larger, with everyday people becoming matters of news subjects themselves, there's a lot that we have to do to change the way we think about planning and taking advantage of opportunities as they come. Holistically, I would say this is one of the most important things for any company who was ever siloed in the past with subject matter experts working individually, is really linking all paid, media, search, earned, owned, understanding how they all fit together and how to maximize those for more power and impact across all the channels and your business metrics. And of course, change. Change is the only constant, and being able to adapt to that and sort of with a positive attitude with limited downtime. So how to engage yourself so that when you get hit with an unexpected varietal that might be hitting us now, for example, that we can recover kind of quickly, help our teams recover quickly, help our clients regain their footing and kind of continue on the road with a minimal loss of momentum.
I want to dig into each of those areas sort of a little separately, but I want to start with one that is sort of interesting to me because you brought up the convergence, right, of your marketing team, right? So maybe you used to silo out paid, earned, owned. Yeah. You had a community manager that sat separate from the person who was actually doing your paid media, for example. And the one thing I've heard on this series, as we've talked to people in marketing, in retail, people who run startups, and then people who are in major corporations, no matter which way you slice it, it's all convergence. Absolutely. Right? It's all having marketing and communication convergence. And so I just wonder, like, if you want to spend a second maybe thinking about that a little further or going deeper into that and why that matters so much that we all know what everyone else is doing and work together.
Well, efficiency and impact. So a whole business, when you set out your annual goals for whatever they might be, whether they're dollar figures or customer acquisition figures, every single person in your company has to be focused on making sure that that metrics gets met and that all of the things that they're doing feed into there. We call it sort of two-way street marketing. So before the business side, say the sales side, would be really separate from the marketing side, which would be the voice side, the brand side. And what we have found is that we really have to link those really tightly together in order for, honestly, marketing to get more budget, more successes, more wins, and more sales for the company and for the team. So for example, on earned media, something that we really like to do is when we are doing a publicity hit or an influencer outreach campaign or something like that, you put paid dollars underneath those to promote it, right? So if you have a great influencer who is reviewing your product or saying something super positive, then you put your paid media on to supporting that so that reaches more people in different feeds that you can then target through paid intelligence services. Also adding things like affiliate links or promotional codes where you can actually target the sources of those dollars so you can understand where those impact is happening. Did it happen on their feed? Did it happen through the paid post? It can all give you those insights and metrics that better help you determine the most effective marketing campaign to do next. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you brought up the influencer piece, right? And I know that's of course been like the hot topic for, I feel like, the last decade, not really, but like, honestly, it just seems like we keep talking about influencers. I have always argued, and I'm curious to get your take on this, is your influencer is basically become what PR was. Right, with the sort of falling apart of traditional media, your influencers now has to be part of your PR efforts. So do we approach it the same way? In other words, in the ways that we used to approach and develop relationships with traditional media, writers, reporters, journalists, should we be doing the same thing with our influencers?
Well, this is great because this actually came up in our class. This was part of our class assignment. We had to come up with lists of influencers and determine. I added something to my course this year was about influencer outreach and creative briefs and then business goals. And it was a little bit out of the scale of what I was teaching, which happened to be PR writing for social media. It is because they're hybrid. It's a completely unique thing. So I treat them as people. I treat them as personal relationships that you nurture, that you develop, that you find out what they care about, you learn their beat, their tone of voice, the things that are happening in their world, and you connect with them as humans the same way that a journalist and a publicist would typically interact. And yet you have to be willing to put these business metrics against them because influencing is not just people. Those are their jobs. These are their livelihoods. This is what they're doing to earn a living. And you want to be respectful of the content that they create and what a business asks of them. If they are a creative content partner for some reason, if they've been tapped, it's no longer just to sort of ask for them to do something for free. You really need to, I think, to deliver resources against what you're asking of that influencer. And so being prepared to make a business case for that is vital.
And then the relationship with the influencer, is it the traditional way we had a relationship with, the journalist at the LA Times? You nurture it, you read their work, you in the same way.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. So we really want to follow those influencers that you want to promote. You want to build those connections. You want to read their pieces, make the notes. The same way, when I think of how I started in PR and some of the small PR agencies and teams, they have a jealously guarded Excel document, that has your contacts, that has the last time they were talked to, that has some of their best stories that might relate to your clients or your product. And sort of who owns that relationship. You have to take it beyond that Excel document, though, and sort of breathe life to it, right? And so having those pieces on there, making notes constantly, updating those elements, building that into your marketing stack as a sort of an end-to-end effort. Technology really allows that today, where you can, I think of public relationships as all the audiences. You and I were speaking earlier about internal communications. Internal comms are a major part of communication and thinking of that audience and how you reach out to them, the tone of voice you want to have, the cadence that you're going to build with them, and the topics you want to cover. You must do the same with your journalists and what you might plan out for business efforts, campaign launches, and also for influencers. So building a persona against every single one of these and then delivering personalized niche responses, this is all possible through technology. And hard work.
Yeah, and hard work. We go deeper into that, but I also wanted to hit on another thing that you talked about off the top, which was all about how the easiest way to say it is we've been disrupted, right? The lesson of the pandemic is disruption. And I know traditionally in PR and in all marketing, you build out a content calendar for the year and all of that. Is that still relevant? Are people doing that less now? Where are we with content calendars and being prepared to pivot?
Yeah, and a content calendar, marketing calendars, you have to do them. But in the past, if you would do that in, say, December, get your executive agreement on those elements and then sort of set it and forget it and work towards those quarterly or monthly targets, that's no longer possible. You want to have that in mind. Always keep the big picture, the end in mind, be in alignment about what you want to achieve, but you have to be ready to change it. So trade shows and fashion shows are getting canceled. That pop-up that you planned for a year is being, no more people are coming into retail, meet and greets or desk sides. You have to reimagine what those look like. But this is really letting you have that opportunity to do it. I had a Halloween band client who had a major Halloween effort. And it's different than sort of another holiday like a Christmas or an Easter, where those are in your family and those are small. And so it kind of has fit within a COVID potential ability. Halloween is really community. It's external, it's social and visible. And they wanted to do live shows. They obviously couldn't do live shows because of COVID. And so they started doing neighborhood distance shows. So they would do pop-up neighborhood front lawn shows and drive-bys. So like imagine your old theater drive-by. So there'd be neighbors and drive-bys coming through. And it was amazing. They got tons of great comments, followers, counts, because they were creating these memorable moments that you had to be there at. And it was very disruptive in the time that they were doing it.
The other thing that I'm noticing is you're talking a lot about business metrics. And in marketing spaces, we've talked about that for a long time. But it's specifically when I think about PR efforts, you haven't always had a conversation that relates to ROI on a PR effort or tying it to a business goal for an annual outcome. What I think that's super interesting. I also think that that's kind of what's becoming the thing that separates the earned media specialist, the good from the great. Right? The ones who can speak to the business outcomes. And I'm just curious if you think that way, if you see that way, and it's kind of the different approach we take to education as well now than what was traditionally taught in a PR program.
They must all be interconnected. So you have to leverage all of your earned efforts, your influencers, your press coverage, your social mentions, referrals, your positive reviews that you've earned, on business or Google, Yelp, turn those into the bottom line results. So you must find a way to put So there's two ways. And again, this sort of two-sided marketing. So say you wanted more coverage, you offer an influencer something on the back end. So the same way that Hollywood shifted a couple of years ago to pay their talent less on the front by giving them back end profitability. Same things that that business efforts have been doing for influencers and journalists, which is giving them affiliate links and callbacks. So it creates a little bit more incentive for that type of coverage or partnership because they can profit if they believe that they can deliver those results. And then again, you can A/B those. So it creates an opportunity to A/B test and see who really can deliver those for your audience and then do more of it. So those are the real things that work well. And again, whenever you have something like if you have a radio spot or if you have a magazine spend that you're doing or out of home, find ways to make those really interesting so that your paid elements then become viral or PR worthy. So a really amazing out of home campaign can be a selfie spot with a viral hashtag call to action. And so your out of home not only gets the impressions that it might do as an out of home purchase, but it can work towards creating earned efforts. And that kind of two-way street marketing, I find to be the best and most naturalistic way to go as marketing budgets continue to shrink and creativity becomes the capital.
I got the most interesting Christmas card this year. A family took their family photo in front of a graffiti wall.
Yeah.
It was literally a graffiti wall. And it made me think about like, if Paul Smith or somebody did something similar and did it in November.
Yes.
Just as you're getting ready to head into the season. Just thinking about that, the ability to make your thing more shareable, to make it last longer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, the last question for you, and it's the last question we always ask. So what is the future of specifically earned media within digital marketing?
I would say that convergence continues to be the key. And I would say consider it participatory publicity, participatory promotion. Find ways to actively participate with the influencers, with the journalists that you want to interact with, that you want to cover your product. Find ways for them to connect back to your business and to your brand or your product so it becomes really meaningful and they get really excited to be part of what you're doing and vice versa.
Awesome. Michelle will rejoin us at the bottom of our time together to take your Q&A. So be sure you use that Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen right now. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
I want to introduce our second guest. Like I said, any of the folks we're talking to this afternoon could speak about any of these topics, whether it's earned, owned, or paid. But Taryn Aronson, the founder and social strategist at Totally Taryn Social, is going to specifically focus on owned for us right now. And I really want to dig in on something that your agency has been championing all year through 2021, and that's being socially conscious, Taryn. And I guess maybe if you could just start with us on that. Like, why did you see that as a specific niche for your agency to lean in toward?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, hi, Tom. Good to see you, and thanks for having me. So I've had my agency since 2014, and the shift towards what I'm calling socially conscious social for me really happened last year, obviously, or the year before, technically, a global pandemic. We also saw a huge spike in Americans really caring about social justice issues on a much larger scale than we had seen before. Black Lives Matter became a topic that, the average household was talking about, whereas before maybe, people considered that kind of more of a fringe issue. And the conversations that I was having with my clients at that point was becoming more challenging because a lot of them didn't really know where they stood, or if they knew where they stood, they didn't know if they should be talking about it. And specifically in the beauty industry, which a lot of my clients fall within health, wellness, and beauty, it kind of became a non-negotiable where followers and consumers expected brands to be standing up and saying something. And I just thought to myself, it was a really interesting moment where, as a marketer, the right thing to do from a marketing standpoint is not, always 100% aligned with what you might think the right thing to do ethically is. And this is a magic moment where we're in where they totally overlapped. The right thing from my perspective, ethically, was exactly the right thing to do from a marketing perspective. And so 2020 was the year where I really thought, I want to work with the kind of clients that understand that and are ready to really lean into it, because the numbers support that is the direction that we should be going. So I see there's already a slide up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're sharing the numbers. There they are. And
here's the numbers. Volumes. Yeah, they're really big numbers.
Yeah.
So there's a couple citations on the bottom there, but these are recent studies. These numbers are pulled from studies done in 2020 and 2018. So during pandemic, right before pandemic. And the biggest one to me that supported me kind of making the shift was that 79% of Americans believe that companies should be working to address social justice needs. That's a huge majority of people out there. Right behind that is the 78% that believe Americans do not think it's okay for companies to just make money anymore. So those two things coupled, I think, really are something that brands and businesses need to consider if they're thinking they have to stay silent. The other one was that people feel a much stronger connection to what we call purpose-driven brands. So brands that kind of stand for something. We also expect companies to connect with us emotionally on the things that matter to us personally. That's kind of how we make our choices. There's a million different options for anything you might be purchasing today. And when you're making that choice, it's likely that you might be considering based on something more than just price, more than just quality. Obviously, those two things are always going to be at the forefront of a consumer's mind. But when those two things are equal, really, you're going to be looking at who speaks to you on an emotional level. 68% are willing to spend more on a socially conscious brand. And then the one that I always like to share with clients or people that are really nervous about this, that maybe have been in marketing for a long time. And the old days, like, you did not talk about this stuff, right? It was sort of like dating. You don't talk about politics, and certainly brands didn't used to talk about politics. But it's really, really shifted, and it was already shifting before the pandemic, but I think that has kind of just pushed us over the edge, where now 61% of people believe that it's important for a company to express their views, even if they don't agree with those views. So the concerns we have about oh gosh, shouldn't I? We're entering a world where we really don't have a choice anymore.
It's so interesting. We did some research I was doing a couple of years ago on this specific topic exactly. And just you talking about that just now reminded me, we had lost faith in the media, we had lost faith in our government, but we still had faith in businesses. And it's so fascinating because my guess would be, as we've moved further into businesses taking a more stronger social position, I would imagine our trust in those businesses has only grown to mimic it, right? Because that's what we expect of them. I think the question, though, that most brands then confront is, how do I decide my purpose? That, in essence, is part of the work you're doing with them. So I wonder if you can kind of summarize what you would do with a client, or how you get a client to that final decision of, okay, here's our purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's no end to the things that we could be talking about or stand behind as causes, right? There's more than we could ever have time. So it's important, I think, for a brand, whether they're a large brand or even a small business, to figure out what really is aligned with, as a small business. Maybe it's, what do you care about as a founder? If you think of a Venn diagram, what do you care about as a founder? What does your business stand behind as an organization? And then what do your followers or your consumers care about? And that sort of middle spot between those three, that's the space where you really want to be talking, especially in organic social media. This is not necessarily how you structure your paid strategy. However, we're learning more and more that consumers want to see the receipts on it. So that might be something that does end up entering your paid strategy. But that's subtle part. So I think a great example of this, Benefit Cosmetics. Last year, when the Texas abortion law came out in Texas, SB 8, a lot of brands were sort of like, oh, what do I do? What do we say? And Benefit came out really quickly and really, really strongly against what was happening. This made sense for them, and it was easy for them to do that because they've had a partnership with Planned Parenthood for years. They are very progressive, and they knew, all right, our customers care about this issue. They are women of childbearing age. They're progressive in their values. This is something that they're going to want to see us take a stand on. So it was a no-brainer for them, and it was easy, and they didn't have to I'm sure there was some hemming and hawing behind the scenes of how exactly do we do this? But I don't think there was a question on whether they would do it. So answering these questions in advance as an organization really helps you when all of a sudden these things happen. We can't really predict when these things are going to happen, but if you already have sort of that understanding in place in the organization, it's a lot easier for you to act when you need to.
But I would imagine it's a super delicate space you have to tread into here, right? Like, how do you advise a client when you think about September 11th or the insurrection that just, we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of that last week? What should you be thinking about as you potentially engage in that space and in that conversation?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Incredibly, incredibly sensitive. So I think once you have the answer to that Venn diagram of, what does the organization care about and where's the overlap with then what our customers care about, is figuring out where you stand in the story. So for September 11th, that comes down to, what is your place in the story? Are you a New York-based brand? Then yes, it probably does make sense for you to share thoughts on the 20-year anniversary of something that was a massive deal for all of us, whether we were even alive at the time or not. We know about that date. For me, as a California-based brand, as a woman that wasn't even born in the United States, do I have a specific lens on this that needs to be shared? Probably not. It doesn't necessarily make sense for my agency to say something about it. But I could consider, if I know that this is something that my followers are really sensitive to, maybe I'm sharing mental health resources that day in organic social. Maybe I'm just looking at it through a lens of how can I be supportive? Maybe this isn't even on feed. Maybe this is through stories. Maybe I just hop on there as a founder really quickly and just speak to, what I'm thinking about the day. It can be more casual and organic. It doesn't always have to be, some really produced official piece of content. And I think what we're seeing, especially with the rise of TikTok over the past couple of years, is that people really appreciate that non-produced content.
I'd like to pivot us to a sort of another space within the owned landscape. And this goes for, if anybody attending, listening runs marketing right now and deals with owned, you already know what I'm going to say. You have no ability to get your owned content in front of your viewer, right? The algorithms have now made it so difficult to reach your audience. So, as somebody who works in this space, can you really compete in owned, first of all? And if the answer is yes, how?
So the good news is yes, I think you can.
Okay.
The bad news is it's harder than it has ever been. And you really have to sit strategically and think about it. And you can't just be like throwing stuff at a wall. So first, just going back to those numbers, I think the best way to compete is by leaning into whatever your purpose is, because that's what people really care about. So that's what they're going to share. That's what they're going to kind of latch onto. From a technical standpoint, jumping on whatever the newest features of an app are is the best way. So for example, for the last year, if you were using Reels for the first 6 months of the last year, you were probably doing really well because not everyone had jumped on that feature yet, right? So a lot of the competitors that you're working with maybe weren't even doing vertical video yet, or if they were, they might not have been doing a great job at it. So this is a place that you could have captured people with way less competition than the full feed on Instagram. It also was a place where it was one of the few places that actually could go out to anyone beyond your followers. Even if you weren't doing paid, you could have been leveraging Reels to hit everybody. So now that gets more saturated, we'll work in with whatever the next thing that Instagram launches. Same thing with TikTok as things start launching and as these apps sort of diversify the different ways that you can play around in organic with them. Being an early adopter really pays off.
Last question for you. Same thing I ask everybody as the last question. What do you see as the future for digital marketing, specifically in the organic owned sort of space?
So I think we've gone through I've been talking all about this, right? The last couple of years has really shown us that people care. They want to know what a company stands for. They, if you're a fashion brand, they want to know, are you sustainable? They want to know, what are the receipts on where these clothes are coming from, et cetera. I don't want to support fast fashion, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just picking one industry. So they cared about that before. Today, they really want to see the actual numbers. So they don't want to just hear you talking about sustainability. They want to know exactly how you're doing it. They want to see behind the curtain. So I think what's important for brands now is, greenwashing has become something that is out there everywhere. We're sensitive to it now as consumers. So you have to be ready to actually present the numbers of what you're really doing. And for a small brand, that's really, really challenging because these initiatives are not cheap. So maybe it's something where you're just sharing your journey of what your goal is and how you plan to get there. Maybe you can't be plastic free now, but maybe you can in X number of years, and you can show the plan of how you're going to get there. And a lot of brands are doing things like that if they can't overnight be as sustainable, just for example, is one thing people care about. Although 80% of consumers are now saying they do care about sustainability. So that's a really big one for product brands to consider. But they want to see what you're actually doing about it on paper.
Awesome. All right. Well, I have a million more questions, but we have to push the pause button. We have one more guest, then we'll come back for Q&A at the end. Thank you, Taryn. Our last guest is Tiffany Frake. Tiffany is a marketing exec with 20 years experience. She's worked with huge brands, Acura, Lexus, Toyota. She, like our other two guests today, founded her own company in 2018 called SparkSet. It's digital marketing and customer experience agency, rapidly scaled it, serving multiple brands across the Western US. I think, Tiff, the biggest conversation in paid media, which is the last sort of area we need to talk about today, in 2021 at least, was around privacy. And we saw Apple add privacy protections. We also got the iOS updates. We're being asked all the time, do you want this app to track you? We're prepping for Google to remove the third-party cookie, which was actually supposed to happen in 2021, but got moved to 2023. So what's up with paid marketing? How does privacy impact it? How you doing?
Well, hi, Tom. Thank you for having me. I actually love being in this position on your panel because I get to follow up with some great things that Michelle said, some great things that Taryn said, and just build on that, because really at the end of the day, the key is like integrating all of these things for one connected experience, which is a huge part of what we do with our clients. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, privacy. So in paid, anybody who's in marketing knows that the data is just the king. You use your data to hyper target, hyper segment, really drill down on who you're speaking to and make sure that the right message is getting to the right person at the right time. That's all done through insane amounts of data. Well, what we've seen, just mentioned, any iOS update as of late, and any marketer might cringe or go in a corner in the fetal position because it has taken a gigantic toll. So personally, I think that's great. And we're headed in the right direction of, privacy should be something that you can make a decision on. As a marketer, and from the marketing side, we took a huge hit because right away it impacted the way that we could serve different customers, different segments, and really understand who we were talking to. So one thing along the lines of privacy, what's happening and what's trending and we're already in the thick of it, is that it's just going to continue that way. People really want to be able to control that. And I think everything digital has really evolved so quickly that now some of those laws, some of those rules that they have in place to allow you to control what is shared and what's not is just now catching up. And so this is just a trend that's going to continue. So for us, what we've done kind of this entire time with all of our clients is we always preach gathering first-party data as part of your strategy. And the specific ways that we tie that into paid is we use things like Google ads, Facebook ads to drive that traffic to either lead gen forms, or maybe it's a specific landing page. I'm sure a lot of the participants on this call right now have heard of it, but there are some really great and intuitive tools out there that you can use to interact with anybody who visits your website in so many different ways. So we like to use a tool called involve.me. So if you guys look that up, it's really about interactive funnels. And from there, you're doing surveys, you're taking polls, you're getting them to interact in one way or another so that you are collecting and owning your own data. It's so important as these platforms evolve so quickly. The big players know how important data is and they all own it. So you get to play on their playground, but if they change any of the rules, you are at their mercy. Mm-hmm. So one thing that we just always work on as part of paid strategy is how are we taking some of that and directing that towards immediate sales? How are we taking some of that always and trying to build our own first party data so that we can talk to our customers when we want to, know who they are just by us collecting, researching, and gathering information.
I was going to ask, so what you owning that data then, I mean, what is the benefit for the brand? So it sounds like you're talking about it. It's being able to communicate. So you're saying like send them an email or also track them, send them a message through any of the social apps. But also what other purposes are you using that first party for? So you're also using it to create customer profiles. Is that what you're saying also?
Create customer profiles, absolutely. There are many ways to use that data, but just touching on what you had said, one of the biggest ways that you can do it is certainly something, a great example is like an email campaign. When you are using social or when you're using paid or organic, you are only able to reach what you're either paying for directly, or in organic, you can only reach a very small amount of the people who either follow you or might be interested in your product because it's a pay to play platform. When you're collecting your own data and you send out an email, it goes to 100% of the people on that email list, aside from those who bounce and whatnot. But that's not saying everybody opens it, but you get to everybody in one way or another. So that is powerful. That is definitely a way you always want to be building that. You always want to be supplementing that. Beyond, then you can start to segment those customers and start really merging it with information that you get from your own website. So now, for instance, for one of our customers in January, or one of our clients, we're driving a huge email campaign and a huge offer and incentive only to those who have purchased a certain amount or left a review or visited the website a certain amount of times. So very targeted, and we don't have to pay any extra for that. We have that. We've already bought it already. We can talk to them without paying anybody. And that is super important as you're using paid to really build your awareness. Then once you build your awareness, you want to be able to own that data, those customers in some way or another, because if anything changes on any of the other platforms, you're really at their mercy.
We talk about advertising as a funnel, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about with people, because at top of the funnel is always awareness. And I couldn't agree more with you on the paid piece. The other thing that I love about email, I'll just throw this in and then I'll ask my next question. But the other thing I love about emails, even if they don't open it, as long as it's been delivered and it's delivered to the right part of their inbox, they see your name. Because I have had so many times where I was going to delete and was like, oh, I need that hat for that hike I'm going on. Yes, this is the company I buy it from, and it's only because the email was in my inbox. I didn't even intend to open it and probably still didn't open it, but it served the brand's purpose.
Just one more of those.
The other thing about,
yeah,
that's that constant awareness piece that we have to work on. The other piece in what I'm describing and what you just brought up, though, is the purchase, right? That's the point we want to get them to. That's where we make the money. And now we can shop through social, which is sort of the most obvious thing, and yet it's been the most innovative thing of the last year. Where are you with that? What are your clients doing with it? Thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think a lot of what is happening right now and trending in social is, really being able to make that purchase and try to take away the friction. So what we're seeing on platforms, especially Instagram, you guys have probably seen they launched Instagram live shopping where you can shop right there, Instagram checkout, where you can actually check out, purchase an item, check out without ever even going to the page of the company. Right. So really taking away that friction, making it as easy and as fast as possible, because let's face it, our attention spans are shrinking by the day. And if we want something, we're very much in this Amazon world of like, we want it now, we don't have that much time. I'm sure we can all say that there have been times where something just took us too long or too many clicks and we just abandoned it. Even though we wanted it, we were ready to pay. If it took too long or was too hard, we're done with it. So for us, we are really testing out a lot of those new tools on the platforms, certainly Instagram for sure. TikTok, it's prevalent, it's relevant, it's there. They introduced TikTok shopping, certainly not as smooth as some of the shopping tools on Instagram. So really, for this year, for us and our clients, there is a big focus on that social commerce side and really that contextual marketing, meeting them where they are. We don't want to interrupt something they're doing. We want to be a part of what they're doing. because then you're not a nuisance, you're like adding to their experience. And so that really is always part of what we're thinking about is, where are our customers? How can we make it super easy? But at the same time, I would say, as much as we're talking about like social commerce and really hopping on that trend and making sure that we're, making a strong case for our clients there, at the same time, we are also talking about still driving them to your website, so in Instagram shopping, for example, you can check out, you can do everything. They don't ever have to come to your site. And that's fine. We want to be there, but we also want to be at a point where we are driving people to our own website, collecting our own data from them. Because again, anything that you're doing, if we put all our eggs in the basket of Instagram owns all those eggs. So, definitely a diverse strategy there, but certainly with social commerce, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but everybody knows probably from your own personal use that is where we are spending a lot of our time. And, in some ways it's not decreasing at all. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's increasing how much time that we're spending there. So as a brand, we need to be there for sure, but we need to make sure that that's not the only part of our strategy.
Okay, last question, same question. The future of the space, right? So where are we with paid marketing? What are you thinking?
Yeah. So for us, we are a digital marketing agency, but really we are a customer experience agency. And what I mean by that, Michelle touched on it, Taryn touched on it, it really all has to be interconnected. So to have a strong brand, to create brand loyalty, to really create advocates that come back and purchase from you over and over, it's really about having a connected experience. So for us, trending forward for sure, we're looking at things like you had mentioned, like what does shopping and marketing look like in the metaverse? And really putting an emphasis on like that as being like future thinking and like, is there something we can test right now? But at the same time, again, not making that a pillar, one pillar of a bigger strategy.
Yeah.
So not putting all our eggs in one basket, because we had touched on in this panel that, we have gone through ups and downs in the last couple of years of everything being in person or people loving in-person stuff, conferences and whatnot, to that all being shut down, everything going digital. Now we're kind of in this hybrid world where it's like, are we back? Are we not? We're sort of there. So for us and building, our clients, we are always looking at, how is the whole experience? Like, how is one person's journey, customer journey with our company? What does that look like? We're literally mapping it out. And then we're adding pieces like, okay, is our customer going to be in the metaverse? Should we go there and try to, create something, an experience for them there, in addition to an experience on our site, social, etc.
I want to bring Michelle and Taryn back in. I kind of want to, since no one submitted a question yet, that means I get to go first, which I'm grateful for. What I think is super interesting about what we were just hitting on is, as I've said off the top today, this whole thing of Web3 has really been a big conversation, even though I think we didn't realize it intentionally internal at the college, like talking about NFTs. We had those conversations in depth. Talking about blockchain, we had those conversations in depth. Recently, the Metaverse, talking about that in depth, and looking at Web3, which just for all of our audience is going to be where we spend a lot of time on this panel throughout the course of 2022 as we've plotted out what we plan to talk about. But I wonder what each of you think specific to the Metaverse. Where are we in the metaverse? Where are we headed to? As I said off the top, I think we wouldn't be talking about it if Facebook hadn't changed its name. I think we'd still be calling it gaming. We'd still be calling it VR. They live in two separate spaces. But I don't know, Michelle, maybe we'll go to you first, and then I'll ask Taryn, and then we'll come back to Tiffany for her final thoughts on that.
Actually, would you mind going to Taryn or Tiffany first? Let me give you a second to think about that metaverse.
Yeah, sure. Taryn, I know I've given you a little heads up on this one. So
yeah, we kind of started talking about it. And I tend to totally agree with you. I don't think we would be talking about it if it hadn't have been for Facebook's sort of pivot into that world. And you and I also sort of talked about this idea of like, we have just gone through an experience where we have all been trapped in our homes for some length of time, some of us longer than others. And we're craving being out there and having these special experiences with our friends, with our families, and with the brands that we care about too. So I think that it's a weird time for us to be talking about us like going further inward, because I think our sense of urgency is to get back outward.
But Tiff, what are you seeing with your clients who are actually interested in exploring the space?
Yeah, so I think Taryn makes a fantastic point, and we discussed that too, Tom. I think that it is a really interesting time to be talking about more digital experiences or virtual experiences when we're trying to get that one-on-one connection. What we're really seeing and excited about for the future is more, and where we kind of see the metaverse coming into play, is more of a hybrid situation. What we're seeing with the whole work from home thing is some companies are not going back at all. So now it's a question of, where we were to where we're going, and where we're going is not one place. And so, how do you keep those people, if we're just talking about the work from home situation, how do you keep those people connected with the company, above and beyond Zoom conference calls? How do we stay connected? Maybe it is an experience there. Talking about, different families or parts of families being in different areas. What is that next level of engagement beyond FaceTime? So do I think that, or do our clients even think that something like the metaverse is taking over entirely? No. But do we think that there's a possibility of like ignoring it? We don't. We think that, in the end, or I guess in the next chapter, it's going to be something that's a hybrid of those things, because pre-pandemic world as we know it has changed so drastically that there will be problems that we don't even know about that might be solved in something that is virtual that can't be solved in a physical capacity. So it's an interesting space. We're already seeing brands, jump in that space for sure. And try things out. So I think that's what it is, more of a testing mode. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't. And there's no one size fits all for any brand. There might be a brand that digital is not what works for them. It might be all in person. I don't think there's any one size fits all, but we definitely think it's something that can't be ignored. Michelle,
back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Taryn and Tiffany, for giving me some great context and opinions. The metaverse feels, I'm going to give away my age, but this has been around for a long time in different versions, right? Like, I don't know if anybody remembers a Second Life. And I know some people who got quite wealthy on Second Life property and building out these personas back then, and it sort of fizzled. So, Tiffany, when you're saying you don't want to ever put all your eggs in one basket, you really have to have a very balanced approach for where the customers want to go. So when you talk about mapping something out, what matters, I have found in my particular clients, it tends to be more of a luxury, more of a personal connection. The deepest things that I think are making this personal connection, having it feel real. So what is realer than real? So what is that? What is that? Is that experiential marketing? Is that pop-up? Is it virtual or metaverse elements? Yes, no, maybe, develop them, figure out what works for your audience, what works for your consumer. For me, the metaverse is on the periphery for where I see the slower trends, where people are actually leaning into more in-person, deeper elements and less fragmented time. They're fighting against this fragmentation, fighting against this technology overlords, fighting against this sort of feeling of immersive life, because they actually want to live. And so it becomes this tension of what is being imposed upon us. We're all virtual here, aren't we? We're not sitting on a conference panel, and what we would ideally like to do. So what is that ideal life? And I think that they've really articulated that you have to meet your customers where they are and what makes sense for them. And it might be on the metaverse, but for now, I'm hoping not.
There's a question in the chat. What's the pros and cons for using an agency versus in-house? All of you have worked in-house. All of you have also worked and now own an agency. Taryn, you want to take a stab at this one first? Pros and cons?
Yes, I do. I was going to say, can I please go first? Yeah, I think the pros and cons are, if you're considering, especially if you're smaller and can't afford a robust, huge team of specialists, an agency really makes sense, because you can get people with years and years of experience that are really specialized in things that it would cost you too much to potentially have that person in-house full time. On the flip side of that, if you need someone to kind of be at your beck and call between the hours of 9 to 5 every single day, then maybe you do rather have somebody that's in-house that can be fully available to you all the time. I think it really depends on your goals and what those holes are. For me, I am always talking about the fact that it's going to be cheaper in the long run to work with an agency like mine, because we can kind of fill in the slots in your existing company where we can work with your team on the things that you already have, and we can fill in the blanks on what you don't have. So for a lot of people, that works out to be more cost efficient and gets them a higher level of talent.
I don't think I ever knew that marketing hours were 9 to 5. That's
Oh,
really
they're definitely not, I guess.
Sorry, just had to go there. Tiffany, Michelle, anything to add on to that? Thoughts on the
I think Taryn really said it all. I think that those are exactly the pros and cons as I see them too. It's just, flexibility. It depends on, budget that you have, your needs. But certainly, an agency, of course, offers flexibility, offers, a way to get expertise without having to have each of those people in-house.
Yeah.
And I worked in-house as a CMO for about 15 years. So I've focused on really developing a team that I had with me for a long, long time. And there's a lot of great depth for having that expertise, having that brand voice, having that consistency and cohesion and shared mission and vision. But as the pace of technology and the pace of marketing demands grows, we always, as an in-house company, had to find agencies to fill in the gap of expertise, because we simply couldn't hire for technologists or analysts or a Metaverse developer as they came up. And so for us, we always turned into that hybrid technology. And so that's what MC Square does. We become that bridge where you have found in your company, you can only go so far. There's a gap to where you are and where you want to go, and you need somebody to help bridge you there. Agencies are wonderful partners for that, to be an extension of your marketing team.
Yeah, could not have said that any better myself. Another question: where to put your budget for marketing luxury products? Traditional magazines, media, social media. Is it a mistake to ignore traditional media in this day and age? Quick answer: it is never a mistake to ignore traditional media. Go for traditional media. It is still very powerful. But I will let the rest of you add on to that.
I have a lot of luxury jewelry, high-end retail experience, and you have to put your money towards it. But again, what I would say is amplify it. If you are going to advertise in a magazine or on a radio spot or have something like that, make sure that you can make it newsworthy, viral, social, so that it has elements that connect to the rest of the strategies.
Tiffany, Taryn, anything to add on that one?
I love that. I mean, I think one of the things we always try to do is similar. It's like build it once, use it many places, use it many times, so thinking that way, I think is that Michelle just described is so critical. Make every dollar go as far as it can. Don't just use it for one thing. Think about how the repurposing of it.
And I would say too, that's where these outside agencies can come in to help, right? You can come up with that strategy internally. And then let's say you want some sort of AR option on your phone to be, the ad in the magazine has a QR code that leads to an AR so I can see that luxury product in my own universe. Well, that's where you can go to an outside agency as well. So that's kind of what I've seen, some of the best use cases for outside, especially when you understand your brand so well. Do you think it's really important to be responding to consumers 24/7, or are spaces and time okay to interact socially? Yeah, Taryn, I knew you had something on that.
I do. It's a stat we didn't get to when I was talking. So HubSpot recently launched some numbers that said that 77% of social media users expect a response within 24 hours, which I think is actually kind of low, to be honest. And they also, especially as they get younger, they expect you to remember them. So they expect that response to be meaningful. If they're someone that regularly comments, they don't want like a pat, thanks for the comment. Like they want you to remember that they said that thing last week, which is incredibly difficult for brands to keep up with. And so that's where, to your point, Tom, there are agencies that specifically focus just on community management that can offer you that. So to have a full-time community manager on staff might be too expensive for you to have, but to be able to outsource that to experts that really understand how to do that and have staff that is, working 24/7 by being all over the country, potentially you're going to be able to cover that a lot more easily than you would if you had someone in-house.
And I know as an industry, we've really looked at bots and are leaning in hard on bots. I mean, I'm sure we're seeing, all of us have seen them on different websites, but Taryn, in social, are you seeing that yet? Like really being applied in a, let's say, effective way where it understands sentiment, it remembers the consumer and the commenter. Is that happening yet?
Yes, especially within chat. I'm not using it with anyone yet, but the demos that I'm sitting on are really blowing my mind. It's next level. It's not like what we saw a couple years ago where it was really sort of like stilted and awkward and you could feel it. It feels incredibly organic and really meaningful.
Michelle, Tiffany, anything to build off of there?
I would say I like to have a little bit of boundaries. I think you're right, Taryn. People do expect 24 hours. I think we used to put a 2-hour time frame between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., 2 hours. People really do expect that memory and that personal connection. So however you can use it and find it and have it be meaningful, those are the ways, those are the technology to unlock. Technology is amazing right now. So that's what's cool about it. But I also like places. Taryn, you shared those great stats about caring about social justice or what they stand for. I think that as humans now look for work-life balances, that trust in business and understanding as businesses are run by people, that has also allowed consumers to understand that those are people. So kindness to restaurant workers, kindness on the front lines, kindness to people in essential areas, kindness to the responder. I found that people are much more nice in the DMs than they used to be, because they understand that somebody might be commenting and then having to go talk to somebody else inside of a store, inside a company, and that as long as there is a response, that they are more patient.
I wonder.
And to that, sorry, I just want to say, Michelle, you're so right. I'm sorry, Tom, I totally cut you off. But I think what's important about what you said is that personal connection, because if it's a nameless, faceless business, you don't have that same generosity as a consumer.
Yes.
Whereas if it's a business that you really believe in, and I don't have these stats in front of me, but the numbers back this too, that we are incredibly generous as consumers when we believe in what a company is about. We're willing to cut them that slack, and we're willing to sort of give them the time to get back to us in those circumstances, because we do think of them as friends.
In the last 2-3 minutes that we have, I want to put this question in front of all you, because it's been a sort of interesting place that I'm fascinated with right now, and that is the evolution of social media. We saw TikTok emerge. We have seen the incredible reporting the Wall Street Journal did in the second half of 2021 on Facebook and Instagram that was so just eye-opening, really. I don't think we realized how powerful the algorithms had become. Is there a space now for a new player to emerge in social, or have we hit sort of a parity among all of these things? And Tiffany, you and I sort of chat about this, so I'll turn to you first for an answer on that, and then I'll give it to the rest of you.
Yeah, I think like Michelle did, I think we have outgrown what we have right now. I think we've matured beyond, as a society, we've matured beyond the tools that are available to us right now, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, even the TikToks. We had talked about, Tom, TikTok feeling definitely more like a entertainment platform, more than that real kind of social interaction that the juggernaut of Facebook was. But certainly Facebook has lost, so many, not only so many of its users, but just so much of its credibility in taking information, in, disseminating false information, all the things that they've gone through over the years. That Facebook was a platform for a specific time. And Instagram also, I would say, was a platform for a specific time. We're on them now because there's not that alternative that really is connecting so many of us. But to answer your question, I absolutely think that there is an open space right now for what is next, and combining basically all of the things that we've been talking about here. To keep a platform like that free, they have to do advertising. So in, making that part like an integrated shopping experience part of it, but at the same time, really trying not to make that the focus and the driving factor of every decision that they make. making it people focused. I would say that in my kind of like assessment of a Facebook, it started out people focused and then quickly went to dollar focused. And when you do that, you make all these little either micro decisions or large decisions, and it led them to where they are today, which is a platform that is not, it's not irrelevant, but it's definitely not as relevant as it used to be.
Taryn, briefly, your thoughts?
I couldn't say it better than the way Tiffany just did. Yeah, I think I fully agree. We're on the cusp of whatever's next. It's going to be really interesting to see what or who it is.
Michelle, anything else?
I sincerely hope that we as a society can evolve and use these next things. Taryn, social justice, people, the human connection, these are the elements that I would like to see technology really be applied for rather than where it is now.
Yeah, I think that will be what we look for in 2022. I think it's going to emerge soon. I think it has to. Anyway, it's been so enlightening chatting with the three of you as ever. I appreciate you all so much because you teach here, because your friendship, and because you always are able to answer my questions when I'm like, what is going on? So thanks to Michelle, Taryn, and Tiffany for being with us this afternoon. We will be back next month. As I already mentioned, the future of NFTs. That is our next topic on this panel. So we look forward to seeing you. The date as it comes up on the screen. I don't think I have it on the screen. So I'm going to look at my calendar really quick, and it is February 8th at 12 noon. You'll get an email in the next 48 hours to get you to RSVP for that, as well as a link to view and rewatch what you learned today. So again, my thanks to everybody. And as always here at FIDM, we encourage you to stay inspired and keep on designing. Have a great afternoon.